Yo, what's good with you? Back in black with another enlisted video. If you guys are new to the channel and you love shooting games just like me, make sure you aim for that like button and shoot that subscribe button as well. It'll help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. Today in particular, we are going to rank all the maps in the Pacific campaign. Before I get started, the first thing I really want to say is that this is definitely ranked with Tunisia as far as the most aesthetically pleasing visuals in the game. It's not a lot of better sightseeing pictures that you're going to get aside from running along the beach and admiring the beautiful rays of sunshine, or running through the dense jungle and looking at the native architecture before it gets blown to smithereens by 18 bombing runs in a row. So, you know, like I said, one of the best, if not the best aesthetic campaigns in the game. Hopefully you guys enjoy my rankings of these maps as much as I enjoy making this video and playing on this campaign in particular. Let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so first map we're going to take a look at today is Guadalcanal Coast, and keep in mind whatever I say about this is going to apply whether you're playing the eastern, western, or regular version of Guadalcanal. So all that being said, what I say applies to all three of those. And from an attacker standpoint, I will say that I really appreciate how, you know, there's a lot of verticality incorporated, especially on the first point. Typically you have the option to either attack from the beach or take a more inland approach and get a little bit more verticality, and of course this applies to the defense as well. Another thing that I'll say about Guadalcanal Coast is that this is one of the few maps in Enlisted where I would rarely ever recommend really using a vehicle, just because they're so confined as far as like the, you know, effective area that they can traverse. Of course we have those sore losers who like somehow get their half track to go up a 45-degree vertical incline and park it on the hill and just shoot at you from you know, super far away, to a point where you can't even destroy them unless you have rocket launchers, which is a super far unlock for the Japanese, and then the one that you get a little earlier doesn't even have a reticle for you to fine-tune your aiming. So that's a little unfortunate if you're playing as Japanese. But you know, as far as the map, you know, design goes, I will say I do appreciate the option to have that vertical or more straight line approach. Looking at it from a more defensive standpoint, I'm gonna say this map might get downgraded a little bit because it might be slightly or overly abundantly apparent that defense has it rougher on this map. You know, simply for the fact that the capture points are larger, obviously. Not only that, they have to contend with, you know, a bunch of people who are going to push them from the front beach side, and then they have a whole subsection of people who will push up on the hill from the high ground. Not only that, somehow, some way, there are vehicles or half tracks that can drop up a 45-degree incline, and they just park it up there and shoot at you from afar with their overpowered weapons. So that's a little unfortunate if you are playing defense, but I think that's something that could easily be overcome if you have a really good pilot or you have really good placement with your heavier light MGs, or, you know, the machine gun nest or whatever. So all that being said, I'm going to give Guadalcanal Coast a solid A tier. Really great for the infantry, really good for the planes, pretty subpar for the tanks, unfortunately, so I can't give it an S, but still really good to play on nevertheless. Moving on to map number 2, we are going to take a look at Tenaru River, which is also another one of my personal favorites in this campaign and just in this game in general. Reason being is that this is one of the few maps in the game that constantly has you interacting with water, for better or for worse. Specifically, if you are an attacker, it's going to be for the worst because you're constantly, well, not constantly, typically every time you catch a point, you're going to have to cross the body of water that is known as the Tenaru River, which can be easy or a daunting task if the defenders know how to use it to their advantage. Particularly when you are moving in water and Enlisted, you already move kind of slow as is, but you move at a snail's pace at that point. So if you're a defender and you know how to take advantage of that, I'm sure you would say that this map is amazing as an attacker. If you're constantly getting shot while trying to cross the water, I'm sure you find that annoying. All that being said, this map is a little bit better for tanks. There's a little bit more paved road and a few more bridges you can go over, but I wouldn't say that makes them like, a must use or anything of that nature. Same thing that I said before about the planes. As long as you're attacking a point that isn't necessarily encompassed by a large building or structure, you should be okay. Of course, if you see the those native little tiki huts or whatever I don't know what they're even called, but those little shacks basically, you can blow those up pretty easily. But at the same time, if you go prone under those things, they can be used as pretty good cover to hide from the bombs as well. All that being said, I really enjoy playing on Tenaru River. Pretty much every time that this map comes up, I never have nothing bad to say about it, unless I'm constantly getting shot in the water. But if you know how to avoid that and use your rally points, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Gonna have to give Tenaru River an S tier, mostly because of its use of the environmental effects that water can do in Enlisted. Moving on to our next contender, we're going to take a look at Gavutu, which, would you believe it, is another one of my personal favorite maps in this campaign and in the Enlisted game in general. I'm sure you guys get the theme here that the Pacific has a lot of, if not the best maps in the game, and I guess it kind of makes sense considering the fact that these are the latest maps that came out from these guys, so they can only get better with time, right? You know what I'm saying? All that being said, Gavutu is one of those maps that encompasses a lot of barracks, a lot of docking stations, a lot of airfield hangars that you have to fight over. For that reason, it's a little bit of a switch up in contrast to most of the maps that you'll play in this campaign, which consist of like wooden buildings and like little like straw shacks and whatnot. All the buildings that you will encompass on this map have a lot more hard body and aren't really as destructible, if that makes any sense. For that reason, I'm gonna have to say this map is already leaning towards the S tier. It's very reminiscent of Airfield from Normandy, which is another thing that I would like to point out. Unfortunately, they don't have any barrage balloons to give you extra lives when you like attack points or whatever the case may be. But all that being said, really fun map to play on. Again, this is another one of those maps where I have pretty much nothing bad to say about it. Another point that I would really like to make in favor of this map is that it's another one of the few maps in Enlisted that does try their very best to incorporate water gameplay as much as possible. Every time I play on this map, I do see a bunch of boats. Great for traversal in the water, otherwise you will be moving at a snail's pace, like I said earlier. And for those of you who bought that premium Japanese access pack or whatever the case may be that came with the Kachi or whatever, which is a tank that I can't believe I even paid money for that thing. I rarely ever use it, but this is one of the few maps where you actually can use it to great effect because there's a lot of water off to the I guess on the right side, depending on which way you're facing or attacking from. You can actually use it a lot and it'll float, and floating tanks are only good on maps like this, so take that for what you will. I'm gonna give Gavutu an S tier. Last but certainly not least in the Japanese campaign, we're taking a look at Alligator Creek, and unfortunately this is one of the maps where I can't really say too many unique things or point out too many features about it that stand out from the other maps, but I will say I thoroughly enjoy fighting on the first point. It is one of the most difficult points to defend in this entire campaign, and I really only find success defending it the entire way through a game if my team is superb at defense. I'll leave the tips and tricks for another video. What I will also say about it is that the last point is pretty unique as well, and that I don't think there's any other capture points in Enlisted that actually use that giant house that's in the back of the map. Not the wooden one where you can go up the stairs to the second floor, but it's another one that you rarely ever get to see utilized in any capture point in this campaign. But I feel like I'm going off on a tangent here. Alligator Creek is a very fun map to play on. It's just nothing that's too crazy about it that I can really make a whole talking point about. So for that reason, I'm going to say that it is a solid B tier map. Alrighty, so that's pretty much all the maps in the Pacific campaign, unless you want to include those east to west variants of maps that I already went over, but I don't really like to, include that in my, analysis of the maps because it's essentially the same thing just from a different angle. But also, all that being said, you can also see that all the maps in this campaign did not get below a B, which I think shows credence and also goes to show that this is pretty much the most well-crafted batch of maps in the entire Enlisted game, and it only makes sense again because this is the latest batch of maps that they gave us, so it only makes sense for them to get better over time. But all that being said, as good as the Pacific maps are, I do actually have some critiques or things that I would like to see in the future to make this campaign even better than it already is, and I'm sure a lot of you guys would wager that this is the best one we've had yet. Anyways, I have 3 suggestions that I would consider implementing to max this campaign out. Nothing too crazy in my personal opinion. First thing I would like to see is for them to figure out a way to make the beach landings, or I guess incorporate some beach landings to make this campaign way more dramatic and theatrical than it already is. They already went through all the work of programming or putting all the assets for the landing craft and, you know, the aircraft carriers and all that jazz into the game. I do not see why they can't, you know, start us out on some, you know, boats or Amtraks or whatever the case may be, and have some bots like pilot them all the way to the beach and drop the ramps and have us like run onto the beach and whatnot. And conversely, now that I think about it even more, this would give the defenders some time to actually build some defensive structures, some barbed wire, some machine guns, whatever the case may be. And then that way it would be, not only would it be more theatrical and more immersive, but the defenders would get some much needed time to actually build up some type of defense, since they're not going to actually have some pre-built structures for us, you know what I'm saying? Or they could actually give us some pre-builds, I don't know, whatever the case may be, do something. But I definitely would like those beach landings to be more dramatic and incorporated into the game, generally speaking. Number 2, next thing I would like to see for the Pacific campaign is some jungle warfare maps. And it's funny because they call this the Pacific campaign, but you know, in reality, so far it would be more accurate if it was called Guadalcanal, because that's the only, you know, island that, you know, the only island that we've explored so far, and we've only explored the coast pretty much on top of that. So I would really like to see some incorporations of some deep jungle warfare, because obviously the beach landings are one part of the you know, Japanese campaign or Pacific campaign, but the inland fighting and the deep jungle, that's a whole nother part of it that I would say is pretty synonymous with the you know, this front fighting, pretty much, you know, island hopping, if that makes any sense. So why we don't have any deep jungle, you know, maps or deep jungle fighting in this campaign so far, I don't know. Maybe it's too many trees for them to render, whatever the case may be, but definitely something I would like to see in the future. Number 3, and my last suggestion, I would really like to see some nighttime maps, and I don't know how they want to go about incorporating this, and it really should be something that should be incorporated in all campaigns, if I'm being quite frank with you, because there are a lot of nighttime operations that took place in World War II, especially by the Japanese, who would very often attack their enemies at night because they, you know, thought they were sleeping or tired or whatever the case may be. So they would sneak up with their swords or bayonets or whatever, and, you know, just try to surprise them, because, you know, you're not going to beat them in a straight up fight most of the time, because we all know the Americans have superior weapons. So it would only be historically accurate, and it would only make sense for them to incorporate some nighttime maps in this campaign, especially for the favor of the Japanese. But that's pretty much it as far as you know, what I could think of off the top of my head for this video. I would like to ask, what would you guys like to see incorporated into the Japanese campaign, whether it be a certain island, a certain map, any gameplay features, whatever the case may be. Just let me know down in the comment section, and let me know what you think about the map ratings as well. Other than that, do appreciate you guys for watching very much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Black guy out. Oh, don't forget to shoot that like button, aim for that subscribe button as well. Help you find better teammates and improve your skill-based matchmaking. Peace.